Hey guys, welcome back to another great edition of National High School Football. I'm your host, Larry Godwin, and my counterpart on the right side of the screen, maybe your left, is Joe Mamone from Prep Gridiron Logistics. Joe, we've had a heck of a first year of these broadcasts. We've taken the time to contact and run down really the most prominent head football coaches at the high school level all across the country, and we've had such a good time. I mean, when you get these coaches to let down their hair, I mean, it turns out to be a fun interview. But we're kind of changing gears tonight. We don't have a head coach, but we have a prominent guy on the national scene nonetheless. Guys, you heard from him last year, and he's back for round 2 tonight with National High School Football, and that is the MaxPreps national football editor himself, Zack Poff. Zack,
Hey,
welcome to the program.
hey guys, I love jumping on with y'all. It was so much fun last year. You knew we had to run it back, and obviously Joe is the king at scheduling all these big time out of state games and in-state games too. So I'm looking forward to the 2023 season. I can't wait till August, September gets here because there's going to be some saucy games coming up for sure.
Well, speaking of those games, Joe, why don't you kick it off? Because we got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
We have a lot to cover tonight. Zack, thanks again for your second annual visit with us. This is going to be an annual thing, and we always like to start talking about the out-of-state schedules right around this time of year, about 4 months before the start of week 1 and 0 in different states. So let's start off with the best, in our opinion, the best games week by week. The best out-of-state games coming in 2023.
Hey, Joe, I got to ask you real quick. Yeah. What is your number one game for the whole season?
Ooh, man, I don't think I can announce it yet because the contract isn't signed.
Games that are officially announced. We'll just count those ones.
Games that are officially announced, probably Bosco, Aquinas.
See, I got Bosco St. Francis, but I feel that St. Thomas Aquinas, they're the last team not from California that has beat St. John Bosco. So they're hoping
they're right there. Those two games, they're in the they're what is it, like a couple weeks apart too, which is great. So
I get the feeling that there's another one that's even more massive coming up, but we won't get into it tonight.
We're not getting into that tonight. You can't get that out of me tonight. I'll get in a lot of trouble.
Before, but I was like, all right, I can't. I'm not going to say anything. It's going to be tough.
Yeah,
but it seems like, guys, St. Francis is always top of mind when you talk about these national profile games. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, Zack already knows their schedule. I shared it with him. But it could be the toughest schedule in the history of high school football.
It is. It's by far the best that I've ever seen in my life. So,
we'll get into that in segment number 2. We're going to be talking a lot about St. Francis a lot. So let's start August 18th. Okay, let's look at the games on the schedule that week. The best out-of-state games. We have St. Francis going to Buford. We have IMG at Lipscomb Academy in Nashville. We got Liberty, Nevada at St. John Bosco, and we have Corona Centennial at Bishop Gorman. Those 4 games are all that Friday night, August 18th. Zack, what jumps out at you of any of those games?
The 2 that I really can't wait to see is St. Francis and Buford. I mean, you arguably got the best team in Georgia with Buford. You got KJ Bolden coming back. Dude's a stud on both sides of the field. Edric Houston, one of the best edge rushers in the country. And Buford's, I mean, they got a lot more than just those 2 dudes. And then you look at St. Francis Academy, they're every year. Coach Masai, man, doing a tremendous job with that program. He had big shoes to fill, and he's filling them for sure. And he's scheduling crazy games, and it's definitely get your popcorn ready every week with St. Francis Academy. That game, and I'm looking forward to Corona Centennial Bishop Gorman because I feel like Bishop Gorman, they might have been the best team in the country at the end of the season last year. The only reason we didn't put them ahead of Mater Dei, obviously, is because Mater Dei beat them head-to-head, so it just didn't make sense to do that. But they were playing as well as anybody last season towards the end. I love Mike Alihado, quarterback. He's a steal for Hawaii, man. That's a big-time get for them at the quarterback position. He's going to be a guy that's probably going to start as a true freshman. And Corona Centennial, though, Coach Logan, they're always a dog, man. They always got dudes, and they always have a great system. So that's a game right off the bat. We're going to learn a lot about both those teams.
That's true.
Out of those 4 games, Joe, I would probably agree that St. Francis and Buford at Buford is probably the top of my list because I'm a Georgia guy, right? And Buford, when they moved up to the highest classification in Georgia last year, I was telling you guys in the pre-show wrap up that, that surprised a lot of people in the state of Georgia because when they moved up to 7A, they were kind of automatically, not kind of, but they were crowned preseason state champions already. It was everybody else was playing for second place. But I made the argument, Zach, that, Buford moving up to 7A wasn't an automatic because 7A ball in the state of Georgia is such a different animal than all the 1 through 6s. And so I felt like when they got deeper into the playoffs, they were going to match up with some teams that had just as much firepower as they did. And that's what we saw. Some of these teams didn't have the depth, but if they could get Buford on their heels and Buford being challenged for the first time like they were in many, many years, I felt like they weren't prepared for that. And that's what we saw. Yeah,
and you look at last year, too. I mean, Mill Creek won it, and that was the only team that beat Mill Creek last year, too. So, obviously, the talent was there. And I like it, too. You brought it up, man. You schedule tough at the beginning of the season. Every year, it shows up towards the playoffs and state championship games. When you get tested early, you learn all your flaws.
Absolutely.
They're going to learn that when they play St. Francis Academy. Mm-hmm. They're going to find out early, all right, guys, this is what we got to fix. This is what we got to work on. And it's just, you get better when you play the best competition around. So I've always been a big fan of scheduled tough teams out of state early or non-league games. It's just going to make you better for the playoff run. We saw that prime example with DeSoto last year in Texas. Mm-hmm. They got waxed by St. Francis Academy, but then they went on a playoff run, won a state title. And I think a lot of that had to do with a couple of teams they played early in the season that beat them pretty well. It was a kind of a lesson learned for them. And they got on a roll, man, especially when they beat Denton Guyer.
Let me ask a question for both of you guys, since we're talking about that first week. One of the premier games is going to be IMG Academy at Lipscomb. Okay. And we were talking, and I was asking you guys, who is the new head coach for Lipscomb? Because, we had the Lipscomb head coach on this program last year, Joe, in Trent Dilfer. And what a fun guy to interview for about an hour or so. But he's moved on to the college ranks. So that coach is following the new coach is following a legendary coach there in a short time that he was there with Coach Dilfer. But what do you think about, are all eyes going to be on the new coach at Lipscomb, especially facing right out of the chute IMG Academy?
Do you want to take this, Joe?
Yeah. I have all the confidence in the world in Kevin Mawai, not only because I'm a lifelong Jet fan, but the guy knows football more so than anyone we could ever meet here. Again, a lot of people will say great players. You don't know if they're going to make great coaches, but I've heard him speak already. The players love him already. Yeah. I think he's just, they're going to plug him in. I think they're going to continue to roll the state of Tennessee.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% too. And, you bring up the fact, Kevin Wyatt was obviously a great player, but he's been around coaching too, coaching with legends. So he knows how to coach the game of football. And I see Lipscomb Academy being just as good as they were last year and maybe even better. They got a lot of talented guys coming back. I mean, Caleb Beasley might be the best cornerback in high school football.
Exactly. Yep. So let's go to that first weekend. That's Saturday. We talked about Friday, August 18th. There's a couple of good games on that Saturday. We got up in Northeast Ohio. We have Valdosta, the number 1 winningest all-time program in high school football, against that number 4 team, Maslin. What do you think about that, Zach and Lara?
Hey, I mean, I know Larry's excited, man, because you got that Valdosta love, and but Maslin, they're a team. They know a lot about winning too. Those are 2 of the winningest programs ever. So I feel like that's going to be a well coached, a well played game, and that's going to be one of the better ones early for sure. And I mean, you look at Ohio and Georgia football; like those are 2 great states when it comes to producing high school football talent, and both these teams are 2 of the premier programs when it comes to winning.
Yep,
Zach. I got to correct you on something.
Yeah.
You said, Larry, with the Valdosta love. I want to show something to you.
Yo, you got Lowndes in the. Yeah, that's right. Never mind. Yeah, no, my
we're
bad.
a Lowndes household.
He lives in the same city. So.
Hey, but this is a tough question though. Like, do you root for your state or do you still root for the other state against your arch enemy?
All kidding aside, I don't consider Valdosta an arch enemy. We just want to beat the brakes off of one game out of the year, but the rest of the year, man, they are representing the state of Georgia when it comes to, and I've always been under the impression that high school football needs a strong Valdosta. It really does, because they have been the standard bearer, if you will, torch bearer for high school football back when high school football was being played with true pigskins, probably. But with that said, man, we need them to play well. We really do, because they are the winningest high school program. And I think it's still a significant brand across the country when you think of high school football and you think about Valdosta. So I would love to see nothing more for them to go up there and get a big dub, man.
Hey, when Jake Garcia was there that year and that all that crazy stuff happened, but like when he was playing, Valdosta was a hot name that year. And every week we look at who our top search schools are. And that season, through the first 5-6 weeks with Jake Garcia there, Valdosta was continually rolling in the top 5 most searched schools on MaxPreps too, because people are interested, man. When you're winning, the people start clicking again. So
yeah, the only big question mark around Valdosta right now is their defense. They had a stellar defensive front last year, because most of them were major D1 guys being recruited by guys like Deion Sanders. And but they were all young. They're all entering their senior season. But because of an off-field incident that happened a couple of months ago, it may shake up that defensive front. So we just don't know how that's going to play out. And that's the only question mark I have around the Valdosta football team right now.
Yeah, I'm eager to see them play a good out-of-state opponent. The last time I remember them playing a good out-of-state team was Chandler, and we all know what happened then back in the Geico Bowl.
Yep. Yeah, that was a good Chandler. Hey, people sleep on Chandler in Arizona football, but Chandler, they're tied with Modern Day for the most MaxPreps top 25 finishes over the last 10 years. They finished ranked 6 times. So, right. I mean, Chandler, they got a tremendous program.
They do.
That I feel like they would have waxed a lot of teams that year in that Geico game.
And that going to Massillon, playing at Paul Brown Stadium is not going to be easy.
That's going to be a great environment for both teams, obviously, and that's going to be a fun one, man. That's going to be good.
And then Larry, that same weekend, on that same day, we're going to be together at the Georgia Carolina Challenge.
That's going to be fun. That's going to be real. Last year, you put together a couple of good games at our stadium, Lowndes High School, and this year we're going to return the favor, go all the way to Moultrie to play in the Hog Pen. And that second game, man, Dutch Fork, with the legendary coach up there against Colquitt County, and they're turning into a legendary program, so it should be a great matchup.
Hey, Colquitt's probably they're gonna probably begin the season ranked in the top 25 this year too. Yeah. I mean, I love
we have him there.
I love Landon Thomas, man. That dude, he's the best tight end in the country. Him and Elijah Lofton from Bishop Gorman, those are the 2 top tight ends in my opinion, man. And Knight Carr, he's got that sauce at the wide receiver position. Yeah, both those dudes Georgia commits, and they got the quarterback coming back too. So that should be a fun game, man. And Dutch Fork, their only loss last year was the St. Francis Academy too. So I mean, that's a program year in and year out. You can lock them up for 13, 14 wins.
And that's another example, Zach, of Dutch Fork playing St. Francis, seeing where they had some holes, filling them in, and running right through the state of South Carolina.
I was happy to see Clemson finally woke up on Jarvis Green and got that kid locked up there, because he was an easy Power 5 player. I mean, that dude, he was a legit running back.
All right, let's go to the following weekend, the weekend of August 25th and 26th.
I can't wait for this.
This could be the best day of football in the history of the sport.
There's a lot of good games.
Yeah, so we got on Friday, the Friday night, the 25th, Thompson against Lipscomb. Lipscomb is going to be hosting 3 really good opponents.
That's crazy, though. That's probably like the 6th best game that week.
I know it is. I know. So now let's listen to these games, okay? DeMatha at Springfield, Ohio.
Yep, that's going to be good.
St. Francis at Chaminade Madonna. St. John Bosco at St. Thomas Aquinas. St. John's at American Heritage. IMG at St. Joe's Prep.
That one, that's a sleeper game right there. Like, because St. Joe's,
it's neutral. It's neutral field in South Jersey. Right? South Jersey. Yeah.
That's going to be a fun one, man. I feel like IMG, they bring back not only do they bring back a lot of talent, but they also added a lot of talent too. And St. Joe's Prep, man, they bring back just about all their skill position guys. The quarterback's back. They got a lot of good, talented defensive players too. That's going to be a good early test for St. Joe's Prep against IMG.
And you remember when St. Joe's played Aquinas last year? They were playing without two of their best players.
Emilio Guard was out, their corner,
right.
and then
obviously Trotter got hurt.
Too. Yeah. And that was probably the toughest test for Aquinas last year, right off the bat.
It was.
St. Joe's Prep took a third quarter lead, but then Aquinas, answered back. So what do you think the best game? Well, you said Bosco Aquinas.
I like Bosco. I like that round 2 game, rematch game.
That's tough for St. Francis, man. You played Buford the week prior, and then now we got to play Shaman Madonna. not just the number one wide receiver, every recruiting side, but he's the number one player in the country for me, Jeremiah Smith, 5-star Ohio State commit. But then you got another 5-star at the other wide receiver position of Josiah Trader. You got Cedric Bailey coming back, the quarterback. You got Davion Goss, the running back, coming back.
Yeah.
Studs on defense. That's going to be a big early test for them, especially they got that sour taste in their mouth, man.
After the Gorman game.
That Gorman beat them like that. So they're going to come back with vengeance this year, and I can't wait for that one, man. That's going to be we were talking about Corona Centennial Gorman. This is going to be an early test game where we find out a lot about both those teams.
Exactly.
Joe, let me ask you a question about that weekend. You've got 3 stellar games lined up. You're billing at Broward versus the USA. Are all those games at the same stadium, just stacked one on top of each other?
Nope. You got 2 at Aquinas. The St. Francis Chaminade game and Bosco Aquinas are at St. Thomas Aquinas. And then the nightcap of the whole event, that event is 7 games over 3 days. The last game is St. John's out of DC at American Heritage Saturday night. Saturday night.
I mean, you remember Raja Bell? I mean, stud, a tenacious defender in the NBA. Dia Bell, his son, man. This guy is going to be a big time quarterback to come from the state of Florida. He was a freshman last year, got a little bit of playing time.
Yeah,
but I think him and Malachi Tony. That's going to be a crazy quarterback wide receiver tandem for the next 3 years. At Heritage, they got 3 stud running backs. They got a lot of talent coming back too. That's going to be a fun game. I think St. John's kind of surprised some people last year when they won the WCAC. I think some people thought DeMatha was going to get it done, but they got to replace some guys on defense, but they're going to be talented again too.
Well, remember St. John's last year? What happened? First game, they go down to this event and they're down to Chaminade Madonna 28-0, right? Something like that. Final score where they came back 35-28. So, and then they learned from that and played well the rest of the year and won their league.
Cedar Grove too, or later.
Yeah, Cedar Grove too. Yeah.
And then,
so what do you guys think about the? We're talking South Florida in August. It's going to be hot. Yeah. It's going to be muggy. Some of these teams. What do you think about conditioning playing a role in this in the second half of these games?
It's going to be huge. We saw that last year when Los Alamitos from SoCal. I mean, it's just a different weather. You don't got the humidity and everything in Southern California. And they went out there, man, and they were tired by the second quarter playing against American Heritage.
Right.
Heritage definitely took advantage of that. Luckily for some of these teams like St. John's, they've been through this process, so they kind of get it now. But that's huge, man. I mean, Bosco too, when they went and played Aquinas in 2017.
Yeah.
And this stuff teams they'll remember and they'll be well coached for it. But sometimes it's like a fighter, man. You could train 10 rounds for a 5-round main event, man. But by the time you're doing all that grappling by round 2, you're tired, man. So there's just some things you can't get ready for. And I think that'll be a big advantage for the Florida schools.
All right. Labor Day weekend. We got Orlando Jones at Good Counsel. This is a good matchup, one that you don't see that often. Creekside, Georgia at Mater Dei, California.
That's going to be fun, man. That's a good opportunity for the Creekside guys, man. Yeah. They be hitting me up all the time on Twitter, man. Hey, I want to be ranked. Yeah,
they're pumped. They have like 19 returning starters or something like that.
Remember when they beat Grayson? I think it was 2 years ago to start the season too. And that was a talented young Grayson team. They had to replace a lot of guys after winning the state title the year before. But I mean, that's the program. They want that smoke, man. That's gonna be a fun one. And Good Counsel too. That other game you're talking about,
Jones. I
like Good Counsel coming into this year, man. I love the running back Dylan Jones. They got a very good offensive line. They got skill position guys. That's going to be a good team from the DMV area.
Yeah, I have them the number one, the preseason number 1 in the WCAC for sure.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I got them 1, and then obviously St. John's too.
Yep. So then we have Norland Miami Norland, first time ever traveling to the West Coast to take on Jason Negro and his St. John Bosco Braves. We got that game too on Friday, and then Saturday, a rematch of last year. St. Francis now goes to East St. Louis.
That game, I mean, I went into that game last year thinking, okay, St. Francis is going to win this one easy. East St. Louis got dogs every season, every year.
Last minute of the game, they needed to come back and take the lead and win.
That was a great game. It should be a good one again this year too. But I think St. Francis, man, they got that sour taste losing to IMG last year like that.
Yeah.
Again, they could have won. You know, that 99-yard pick six was.
Yeah, really if it wasn't for that late second quarter pick six, it's a different game, really.
Yeah, guys, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. It's kind of unfair this early in the season. We're not even in spring ball yet. But, you know, we're talking about St. Francis. So if you get to this part of the schedule, they've already played Buford. They've already played Chaminade Madonna, now East St. Louis. So after this game, are they 3-0, 2-1? What do you think? Heading into the Bosco game.
I don't know.
And Larry, they're all road games.
Yeah.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, I think they'll be 3-0 or 2-1. I feel like they could lose that one of them against Buford or Chaminade Madonna, but I could very well see them being undefeated going into St. John Bosco the following week. Which would set up great for everybody if both those teams are undefeated when they meet up. Yeah. But Bosco's got to get by Aquinas too. So
right.
They both got tough early tests too. So if to answer your question, I'm gonna say 2-1.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. I
like Chaminade Madonna at home or at Aquinas, but in Florida.
Yep. Same here, Larry. 2-1.
But hey, Coach Masai is going to use this as bulletin board
material to get
of course. Absolutely.
I mean, again, I think of Madonna, how everybody was so excited about that Gorman game, and it was over literally, you know, at the middle of the second quarter.
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect. I mean, St. Francis has a lot of studs coming back. They brought in some players. They got one of the best quarterbacks in America.
And they got special teams.
They got great special teams now for the first time in a long time. Yeah. From the long snapper to the punter and kicker, they've never had great special teams as they do now. So who knows? They could very well be 3-0.
What do you think, Larry?
Well, I'm kind of stuck between going 2-1 and 3-0. Yeah. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I think they're going to be 3-0 heading into Bosco.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of hope so, because that would set up that game would just be. I mean, it's already going to be big regardless. But if they're both 3-0 or undefeated going into that one, that's going to be nice.
Yep. All right, let's go now to the following weeks, the September 8th, 9th weekend. We have again another Chaminade Madonna game. Bergen Catholic at Chaminade Madonna. We have Christian Brothers at Lipscomb. We have IMG at Ben Davis, Indiana. Finally got rid of those horrific rules.
Yep.
And now they could play some really good teams.
They're excited about that one too.
Now here's one of the few good Texas games. We're going to get into this later in this show. Texas is a real disappointing state this season coming up for out-of-state games. But the one highlight is East St. Louis at Atascocita. And we talked about, St. Francis at St. John Bosco in the Trinity League versus USA event.
Yeah, and I mean the last time that St. Francis played in that was when they got to face Bryce Young in 2019. And their corners were clamping down the modern day wide receiver. So Bryce Young ran.
He ran. He just ran wild that game. That was the difference.
Yeah, that was the moment where I was like, I mean, I knew Bryce Young was a real deal when he was a freshman and all that. But like that was the game. I was like, all right, this dude is playing against future D1 players, and he was by far, well, not by far, because Blake Corum had a great game too. Right. Yeah. But he was the best player on the field that day too. But St. Francis, they're going to be on the same field. This time they're going to be playing St. John Bosco. And I was telling you, man, the last time St. John Bosco lost to a non-California team was St. Thomas Aquinas in 2017. So they've done very well against non-California opponents.
Yep.
This is where I think St. Francis, they stubbed their toe.
Yeah.
In this game.
I agree. I think St. John Bosco is going to, I mean, they got to replace some guys, but St. John Bosco, they got a lot of guys coming back too. They're gonna have.
I don't know, man. You got MVB Michael Van Buren.
Yeah,
all right, he's going to be the best quarterback in the game that night. I think so. So Who knows?
Bosco, they got to prove it at the quarterback position with Pierce Clarkson gone now too.
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll see. But their defense is nasty, man. Peyton Woodyard, stud.
Yeah.
Then Billy Amuasa, another big time dude. And the list goes on and on with all the guys that Bosco has on defense. All
right, let's go to the following weekend. We're almost there. Weekend of September 15th, 16th. We have Glenville, Ohio at IMG, which is pretty cool. You don't see a lot of Ohio going down to Florida. You don't see it that often.
Hey, Glenville, too, that was the first time they won a state title last year. So, and they got a stud corner. He's a big time dude. He was a first team MaxPreps Junior All-American last year. So they're gonna be ready for that one.
Yep. And then we have St. Joe's Prep at Don Bosco, which has always been a good rivalry going back 10, 15 years. And St. Francis at West Utah. Really stepping it up 2 years in a row. Last year they hosted Mater Day, and now this year they're hosting St. Francis. And then that Saturday, St. John Bosco goes and plays in Hawaii at Kahuku.
Yeah, Kahuku, man. They want that smoke, man. I got to give a shout out to my mom. She graduated from Kahuku. I won't say the year because it was a long time ago, but she's a Red Raider alum, man. And just that program, they do a tremendous job, not just playing the best competition outside of Hawaii, but also producing talent at the college level. They've had a few guys drafted in the NFL over the last 10 years too. So that's just a tremendous public program out there in the 808. But that's going to be tough because they play them and Mater Day this year, Bosco and Mater Day. So,
well, let's talk about it. There are two schools. There's two programs in America that both out-of-state teams that both play.
But you can't say the other one yet.
I can't yet, but that's Kahuku's one of them. I mean, Kahuku is playing Mater Day and St. John Bosco, and in a few weeks when we're allowed to, there'll be another team that could possibly say the same thing. So let's keep going here. We're almost done. We're going to skip over what's listed there on 922 because it's not announced yet. 923. I love this game. Again, shame on me for not promoting the hell out of this. Most of the games we just reviewed are going to be on the Flow Football channel. Yeah. Courtesy of Gridiron Logistics.
There's gonna be a lot of
so the only games we can't put on a Flow are the California Southern Section games because they have a exclusive deal with another company. But a lot of these games we just talked about, fans out there, you'll be able to watch on the Flow Football channel. This one is going to be great. We have on Saturday, September 3rd, Mission Viejo at St. John's, DC.
Yeah, I'm looking forward, man, because Mission Viejo, they traveled to Hawaii last year, but they don't really travel a lot outside of California and the West Coast. So that's going to be a big test for them. Chad Johnson, this is a guy that was offensive coordinator with Bosco before taking over the head coaching position with Mission Viejo. And, they beat Corona Centennial last year in the playoffs. That was a big win for them. And they're right there when it comes to some of the top teams in Southern California. They're battling for that number 3 spot just behind Mater Day Bosco.
Hey, Zach, the last time I saw Mission Viejo live was when they played my son's team. Remember they had a home and home with Don Bosco.
Yeah. Was that when they had Mark Sanchez?
Well, no, Sanchez was a Jet by then. He helped them pay for the trip out to Ramsey, New Jersey. But year one, Bosco beat him pretty bad, like 35-7. And then year two, it came down to a last second field goal that I don't know if you remember. Mission Viejo bumbled the field goal snap, and Bosco guys say that the snapper's knee was down, so it should have been called there, but the ref didn't call it. He extended the play, and they ended up winning it in the last minute of the game.
Wow.
So that's going to be having Mission Viejo come to the East Coast is going to be a real treat.
Guys, let me ask you something about Mater Day. We've gone over a couple of those games, and I wanted to kind of single them out just because we had their new head coach. I think it was Coach McManus.
Frank McManus.
Great guy, a fun interview. But he's replacing a legendary in Bruce Rollinson. How do you think that transition's gonna go over? You think they're just gonna not miss a beat, or you think there's gonna be some growing pains? Or what's your thoughts on that?
He was there for so many years.
Yeah.
Come on. I think they're going to plug him in and they're going to continue to roll.
And on top of that, Bruce is still going to be around. Like, it's not like he's not going to be out helping or anything. He's still going to be around helping all the coaching staff. He's still going to be around the program. I feel like this is, if they would have hired somebody outside of Mater Day, then I feel like this transition would have taken a little longer. But, bringing up Frank McManus, a guy that's been coaching at Mater Dei for, I don't know, like 15 years.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. So I feel like this is going to be an easy, smooth transition. And, Elijah Brown, and he's the leader of Mater Dei. He's 29-1 as a starter coming into his senior season. And he's really the leader of that team. And you can just tell all of the kids, they love Coach McManus. I feel like you're not even going to realize, I mean, that's crazy to say, but you're not going to really even realize that Coach Rolo's not the head coach anymore.
Well, the reason I ask you that is, I asked you earlier about Lipscomb Academy, that they're replacing their legendary coach as well in Trent Dilfer. And we've had some other notable programs replace coaches over the years. Are these national programs, are they so ingrained with these super athletes that they just plug in another great coach and they just when was the last time that you can remember on a national program where they replaced a coach and it went sideways?
I mean, your school, Joe, you got Don Bosco Prep, man, when Toll left. I mean, I feel like
they had some hard times.
Yeah, that was kind of rough. But yeah, that's a good question. I feel like a lot of teams, when they do replace these coaching legends, if there's not like some violations like we've seen with like Coach Props or something like that in the past, but if you just kind of bring in that smooth transition, you bring somebody that's been with the program, that's kind of knows what it takes to be head coach of that school. Right. I feel like it's just really a smooth transition.
Okay.
Yep. All right. That same weekend, the next weekend, September 29th, St. John's, we talked about, they're going to Massillon now. So Massillon, member, is hosting Valdosta, and St. John's are also hosting the top team from Delaware, Middletown.
And watch, don't be surprised if you see them on a deep playoff run, because they're scheduling these tough out-of-state opponents too earlier in the season, midway through the season. It's just going to make you better going into the playoffs.
Yeah, Ohio in the last few years hasn't really done that. We saw Moeller play Good Counsel last year at our Ironton event.
I think St. Edward played Cherry Creek, but
yeah, Ed's is playing this year.
That offensive line's no joke this season. Yeah. They're the best team in Ohio for me.
Yeah, Ed's playing Center Grove, and they're playing Good Counsel. So,
those are good games. Center Grove, I mean, they got hot last year, won another state title.
Yep.
They're going to return a lot of guys too, so they're going to be they'll be the best team in Indiana most likely.
Right. Yep. And then the last game every year on the Flow Football Channel, our last game of every season, it's kind of like a de facto mythical national championship game, is always St. Francis IMG. So that's going to be on November 17th. That'll conclude our broadcast schedule for 2023, and that's always a great game, and it's becoming a rivalry, which it should be.
If St. Francis Academy is undefeated going into that game, I mean, obviously that game will be for the number one spot in the country, especially too if IMG's undefeated.
Yeah, remember, if IMG's undefeated, they beat St. Joe's Prep, Glenville, and Ben Davis lead coming up to St. Francis. St. Francis, if they're undefeated, that means they beat Buford, Chaminade, East St. Louis, Bosco, IMG, and another really good team probably. So that could be it. I mean, that could be the Flow Bowl. I always like to say, if that ever comes to it, both teams undefeated, that's the Flow Bowl.
It's smart for Flow Football to have that game so late in the season too, because you got to keep your subscriptions all the way till November at least too, because you can't get rid of it, and then it's like,
yeah, exactly. But so guys, that is our list of the best games from August 18th to November 17th. Let's go over now some of the teams themselves, the top out-of-state schedules. I made some notes here. We talked about St. Francis, Buford, Chaminade, East St. Louis, Bosco, IMG, probably another good team at least coming. And we're not even talking about, they're playing West Utah, St. Thomas More out of Connecticut. It's not a bad team. They're a good team. St. John Bosco, got Aquinas, St. Francis, Kahuku, Miami Norland, IMG we just talked about.
It's like then they get Trinity League, and then they get Southern Section D.
Mater Day twice, probably.
Yeah, so that's just crazy that they're out of state like that.
The good thing is all these teams are going to be intertwined now, so it's a good thing.
Joe, with these, we talked about how brutally tough the St. Francis schedule is going to be this year. Let me pick the brain of probably two of the best minds when it comes to national high school football scene. In you two, how many stumbles will you give St. Francis and still make them the number one team at the end of the year?
It's tough because it depends on what the other teams do. But like, for example, if I can't say the other team, but if they lose if they lose one game and then bounce back and win that game, if that game does get finalized, that'll help people forget about the early season loss.
Yeah. And Larry, everybody knows I'm a purist. In the 1 year that we put up our top 25 poll, my philosophy is that there's so many high school football teams, 16,000. My belief is that the champ should be undefeated. So we'll see. We'll see if that philosophy can hold true this year with all these great.
I feel like it changes every year. Like you can't go in.
I know it does. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
I think it changes every year. And this is Joe. I'm right there with you. I always have
a problem with if the top 10 teams all have a loss, fine.
Yeah.
But I'll always have a problem if there's 2 or 3 that are undefeated and played a really good damn good schedule. I'm always going to side with those teams because I think with 16,000 teams, the top team should be undefeated. Yeah. And last year in our poll, Miami Central got the nod number 1 because they were undefeated. And who did they beat on the road? IMG, the team that isn't allowed to play Bosco or Mater Dei.
Yeah. No, so I mean
that was our thinking.
I feel like you could have made a case to have Miami Central number 1 or St. John Bosco number 1, and that was pretty much end of story. Like I feel like those two teams did enough. And the only reason that St. John Bosco did edge out Miami Central for us was their one loss was against Mater Dei. Their quarterback got hurt, didn't play in the second half. It was a tight game the entire game. And then they came back and beat Mater Dei. And that was a great Mater Dei team who's going to be even better this year, which is crazy.
If St. Francis loses to St. John Bosco and then still faces IMG at the end of the season and beats IMG by 2 touchdowns, do you make them national champions?
It depends what happens with Bosco.
Okay.
It depends what happens with St. John Bosco. Because if St. John Bosco beats them and goes undefeated, wins another CIF state title, I mean, we can just hand them the natty right now.
I got you. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. That's good. So, hey, that's why you got to play the game.
Yeah. Let's talk about the public schools with the best out-of-state schedules right now. My list would be it's not in any order, but just off the top of my head, Centennial, they have Punahou, Gorman, and Liberty, Arizona, solid for public. East St. Louis has St. Francis and Atascocita, solid again. Kahuku, Bosco, and Mater Dei.
No one's taking that.
Yeah, Maslin, Valdosta, St. John's, DC, and Middletown, Delaware. Good Delaware team. Liberty, Nevada has St. John Bosco and Gorman.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Liberty, Nevada, remember, was kind of wanted to like curb back Bishop Gorman, not allow them to have so many elite games because they didn't think it was fair. And look who they schedule: Bosco and Bishop Gorman.
Yeah. No, that kind of sucked for Bishop Gorman, man, because that's when they kind of get a chance to show why they're the number 1 team in the country. If they schedule tough out of state, and if you limit it to 3 or less games, that's just not fair for them because they're as good as anybody when it comes to talent and coaching in the entire country. And that's a team I would love to see. I mean, obviously we know the one game fell out, which that could have potentially been number 1 versus number 2 early in the season, which would have been on that same weekend as the 26th. Yeah. So I was bummed that game fell out because that would have been a perfect opportunity for Bishop Gorman.
Yeah. So that can you think of any other publics I might have left out? I think I got them all. Those are the best 5 publics playing the toughest out-of-state schedule. So now, my favorite part. See, Zack has to be politically correct. I don't.
This is when I don't say anything.
So these are my biggest to date, and things could change. You could still add games. We have 4 months to go, but as of today, April 10th, my Joe Maimone's biggest disappointments are number 1, Miami Central. Right now, as far as I know, their best game of the year is an in-state game against.
You're on their good side right now, Joe. I don't know if we should do this.
Yeah, Chaminade Madonna, they're playing. We know that. To the best of my knowledge, they do not have an elite out-of-state team on their schedule, which is a big disappointment for me. Number 2, Bishop Gorman. Again, we can't help what happened. They were supposed to play Mater Dei. It fell through. But to the best of my knowledge.
That game last was so good too.
It was. Best of my knowledge, they have 2 publics on their schedule. Okay. They're an elite private. You got to play another elite private if you want to be ranked high. That's my opinion. St. Thomas Aquinas, I always have a problem with them. Every year they play one really good out-of-state
But you
team.
got to give them credit, man. They playing.
I know, but why does everybody else is playing more than one? Why do they only have to play one? That bugs me a little bit.
Yeah,
one of the reasons.
Pass this year, man. They playing St. John Bosco. You got to cross them off that list.
Listen, St. Francis, Bosco, Mater Dei are all playing 3 or 4 elite privates, and they're only playing one. I mean,
and Mater Dei really
wants. Why is Aquinas still playing Fort Lauderdale High School? I don't know. That shouldn't be happening. I'm sorry.
I got bad love for Roger Harriet, man.
Man, you are a purist, Joe.
He's a great head coach, and he does a great job for that program.
And he was one of the best interviews we had last year on our show. But again, this is my opinion. We live in America. We can all have our opinions. The state of Texas, North Shore, Duncanville, DeSoto. It's like non-existent. All right, non-existent. I do know that Duncanville is hosting Rockledge, Florida, which is an okay public school. But remember the last couple of years, we had Duncanville playing Mater Dei, IMG. We had DeSoto playing St. Francis. We had Allen playing Bosco. None of those games this year. Thank God we have a Atascocita stepping up to play East St. Louis. It pains me to say I don't even think on our Flow Football channel we're going to have a game from Texas this year. I don't think it's going to happen.
All right, so Joe, let's be as politically incorrect here as possible. Let's cut through all the stuff.
Yep.
Why do you think that? What's holding Texas back? Why do you think they're not scheduling these games?
Because of the results of the last couple of games that went down.
Okay.
We had Bosco, Mater Dei, IMG went down there and trounced them, but they would have any team would have gotten trounced by those 3 teams. There's nothing wrong with that. To be the best, you have to play the best.
I feel like too with Texas, man, is that they strongly believe that they're the best state when it comes to high school football. So they feel like they don't really need to schedule out of state games, which it sucks for us as fans and people that are doing polls because it makes it easier.
You know what? It's too late now. It's too late now. I agree. The results of those games, St. Francis, Mater Dei, IMG, Bosco, those results are going to last for decades, in my mind anyway.
It sucks, too, because you look at a team like Duncanville, they're talented, man. They won the state title last year, first since 1998. Colin Simmons is the best defensive player in the country, might be the best player in high school football. He's a freak 5-star edge rusher. He had 22.5 sacks last year. But they bring back a lot of talent, too. They're going to be just as good as a lot of teams in the entire country. It would be nice to see them play a premier out-of-state team next season.
Yeah, unfortunately, none of those. It's not happening. Unfortunately, I'm trying to possibly work with Allen again for 2024, but it's that's disappointing for the 2023 season. Again, one last disappointment, Larry. It involves your state.
Uh-oh.
These teams on the rise, Gainesville and Carrollton.
Yeah.
If you want respect from nationalhighschoolfootball.com and you want to be in our top 25 poll, you have to schedule some decent out-of-state teams. You can't just be 13-1 against Georgia teams and expect to be in the top 15. No way.
I will say Carrollton, though, they did make it all the way to the 7A state championship game last year with a freshman quarterback. He's not your normal freshman quarterback. Julian Lewis is easily a top 5 quarterback in the country, regardless of class, which is crazy to say for somebody in the class of 2026. But I feel like Carrollton, man, I think they're gonna be right there for the top teams in the state of Georgia this year.
You know what? But then I give the benefit of the doubt. Buford, Colquitt are playing really good out-of-state teams. They're gonna start higher for me because of those games. Let's see what happens.
But luckily for Carrollton too, even without scheduling the out-of-state games, is they could potentially see Buford and Colquitt in the playoffs. They beat Colquitt last year in the semifinals, and it was a good game. But they clearly were kind of controlling that whole game too. So I like.
And even last year with Hughes, I gave Hughes a lot. I had them high in my my poll, and one of the reasons was because they did play a lot of Georgia teams, but when they did play a South Carolina team, they totally dominated them, and it was a good Spartanburg team. They're good.
Yeah.
Langston Hughes again this year. They're going to start out in our top 25 for the most part. They are going to be playing Butler out of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Not a bad team. So again, if they didn't schedule that Butler game, I don't know if I start them in my top 20. You gotta, with all the teams that we just talked about, entwined with all these great elite out-of-state games, you have to join that club if you want to be in our top 10. I'm sorry, you just do.
Hey, I got mad love for Aaron Nolan, man. That dude, I love the name.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
And he's going to Ohio State, right?
He's
going to
for
Ohio State now.
55 touchdowns last season.
Yep.
That team, I think they broke the record for most points in a single season in Georgia history too. So they're gonna let it. He's gonna let it air out next season again. He's a stud lefty quarterback, man. I'm a big fan of that dude's game.
Yeah, let me throw a question out for both of you guys. And Joe, you kind of sparked this question in the little segment that you had there about, earning respect, playing these out-of-state teams. You guys have been dealing with high school football coaches for a long, long time. What percentage of high school coaches do you really think it just doesn't interest them at all to play out-of-state games? Because in their mind, it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect their outcome. It doesn't affect their season. In some coaches' mind, I would think that it will probably do more harm to their program than good. What do you say about that kind of argument?
They could have that philosophy, but you're not going to be ranked high in the National High School Football.com poll. No way.
Yeah, I feel like at this point it was different 10, 15 years ago, but it's just a different game now. This is high school football has way more national spotlight on it than it ever has in years past. People generally, they care about high school football now like they do college football. So when you get that opportunity to play big time games on big time networks, even Flow Football, NFHS Network, any type of game that you can play that's going to get a lot of eyeballs, usually it's going to be those big out of state games too. So I feel like too, when it comes to winning state titles towards the end of the year, if you're scared to schedule big time teams, you're usually not going to make it out of the second round of playoffs. So it's just hurting people when you don't schedule games when the opportunity is presented to you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm just presenting the other side because, Joe, in just dealing with the local school here in Lowndes High School, over the last 5 years, we have 3 different coaches, now going on our 4th. But we had a longtime coach, old school ball coach. He didn't give a rip about playing out-of-state games. He had a cemented legacy, winning 4 state championships, and that was perfectly fine with him. Then he had his replacement in Jamie DuBose. He wanted to establish a national brand, and he started to schedule these high-profile national. Then his successor, he left after a couple of years, and his successor really didn't care about playing out-of-state games. So it depends on the philosophy of the coach that you're bringing in, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you could. The end-all goal is for most teams is to win a state championship. I get it.
Yeah.
But don't complain if you're not in the top 25 when your strength of schedule is 13.1 versus a Mater Dei who's 66 or something like that.
And you remember a few years ago with Ja'Cory Brown when Lowndes was undefeated, and people were coming at me like, hey, how come they're not ranked number 1? And then they ended up losing to a very good Marietta team. What did Marietta do that season? They had
played some really good teams.
Didn't they beat St. Joe's Prep?
They did.
That the year they beat St. Joe's Prep?
That was they had Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyle McCord. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And Marietta beat him, man. Eric Gilbert, I hope he turns it around. Everything's good with him in Nebraska, man, because that dude is one of the best tight ends, one of the best overall players I've seen working at MaxPreps for 10 years. But that just really shows it right there. Is Marietta schedule tough? And when it came to playoff time, they played their best football. Mm-hmm. And Lowndes, that was a great Lowndes team. Ja'Cory Brown, man, I love that kid's game. I think that was his sophomore season. He had a big time year. And but Marietta got him, man. And I think a lot of that had to do with the tougher out of state and tougher competition leading up to that.
I'm right there with you, man. I would love to see more of it myself.
Yeah.
Well, Larry, you got your one game against Christ School this year out of North Carolina to watch.
Yeah, thanks for that, Joe.
So
next subject.
We're good.
Yeah, he don't say nothing. He's like, all right.
No, listen. Remember last year we brought American Heritage down.
That was a good team.
Lowndes,
that was a
great game.
Oh my gosh, that was a good team.
And then Colquitt had an easy time with Deerfield Beach, so we just reversed it a little bit this year.
Yeah.
Listen, we had the American Heritage head coach on this show, and we were doing some interviews. And Zack, I made one of the stupidest decisions in my 52 years of trash talking the head coach of American Heritage before that game. And he put a beating on us that night.
Remember the first play of the game, like 65-yard slant?
Oh my God.
Brandon Ennis, man, that dude, that guy was playing 8th grade varsity football for a reason too. And I mean, he was special. People kind of forgot how great he was because his junior season, he had to slide in and play quarterback because Blake Murphy got hurt.
Yeah.
He showed last year. Him and Jonte Cook, those were the two best wide receivers, in my opinion, last year.
They showed it on the field. That's for sure. I'm a believer. Whew.
Yeah. So guys, that's all I got. That's what I wanted to review, that our schedule. I wanted to go over the top teams, which we did, the best public out-of-state schedules and my disappointing teams year to date. So we got it covered.
5 minutes.
Well, guys, listen, I have 2 surprise questions for you guys. Well, one for both of you, and then the final question is for Zack specifically. All right, so here, guys, it just seems like every single year you've got a top 10, top 15, top 25 baked in. It's the same names every year. You just shuffle the deck a little bit. Are there any breakout teams that you're expecting? Just, you've been seeing them coming for a while, but now they've arrived. What's the breakout team that could make a splash this year?
I'm sticking in your state, man. I'm rocking with Carrollton.
Okay.
I like what Carrollton. I know Joe's not a fan because they're not scheduled out of state.
I have them. I'm going to have them in my top 25.
Yeah, Carrollton's my team. That's my sleeper team this year, and it's all because of Julian Lewis. I know they got other dudes. Caleb Odom, stud, wide receiver, tight end, whatever you want to call him. Bryce Hicks, most underrated running back in the country. They bring back a lot of guys from last year, 7A state title runner-up. And Carrollton's a team I got my eye on this year. I think they're going to be that sleeper team, and I think they might end up by the time the year's over. We'll see, because there's other good teams in Georgia. Buford obviously brings back a lot of talent. Langston Hughes, even though they're 6A. But when it comes to number 1 team in Georgia and a team that could potentially finish all the way in the top 5 or top 10, I think Carrollton's that one team to keep an eye out this year for.
Gotcha.
Yeah, my choice would be Chaminade Madonna. They came onto the scene last year with a vengeance. They just took a beat down at Bishop Gorman. This year they have a much tougher schedule. They're playing St. Francis, Bergen Catholic, and Miami Central. So if they win those 3 games, they're gonna just slide right through their Florida schedule. But if they win those 3 games, they'll be they'll cement themselves, for the foreseeable future in the top 10 in our poll.
Right now, honestly, I keep kind of going back and forth who I'm going to rank higher, Chaminade Madonna or St. Francis Academy to start the year. But they're both kind of in that 4 to 6 range for me right now. That's
same here.
I agree. Chaminade Madonna, man, that's a very, very talented.
The one negative about them, in my opinion, is they lost a lot of their line on both sides. Where St. Francis is consistently has just big, nasty linemen on both sides of the ball.
The one thing I will say too, real quick, before you get to your second question, Larry, is at least with South Florida, you see a lot of transfers coming in from, not from out of state, but kind of same area. So I feel like Chaminade Madonna is going to be able to build their defensive line that way.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, final question for you, Zack, is, it's kind of a slower time this time of year for media folks like us, but you deal on a national scale. What does Zack Poff do during the off season to occupy his time?
I drink a couple beers, watch March Madness, man. No, it's nice. It's a nice slow process right now, because usually what I'm doing is, when kids commit, I'll make them a highlight tape and stuff like that, and kind of watching a lot of tape to kind of get ready for my preseason list when we do our top 10 running backs, top 10 quarterbacks, top 25 rankings. We do our top 100. So I'm just reading as much notes and research as possible. And once May gets here, then that's when I'll start to turn it up, and then we'll kind of finalize the top 25. And June gets here, we'll start to do that. But the cool thing is with us is, we got the NFL draft coming up. We'll do a lot of cool stuff with that. We'll look at teams who've had the most draft picks over the last 10 years. For people wondering, who do you think it is, Joe?
High school football teams with the most draft picks.
The last 10 years.
Aquinas?
Yeah, they got Aquinas.
Really?
I won right now. IMG Academy is one behind them. They're probably going to overtake them this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, St. Thomas Aquinas right now, number 1.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're doing cool stuff like that. So with the NFL draft coming up, we'll have a lot of cool data-driven articles where it kind of looks at, schools with the most draft picks, states with the most draft picks. I believe Georgia had the 3rd most draft picks over the last 10 years, more than California. And Florida was 1 and Texas was 2. So yeah, I always find stuff to do, man. There's always work to be done. And I love my job. I don't even look at it as a job, man. I get to cover high school football. I get to connect with a lot of these kids that are just great people, great coaches. And, I'm just trying to do the best I can when it comes to rankings and just being credible. And by that, you got to put in the work. So that's
hear you,
always,
man.
that's the motto.
And when it comes to putting in the work, there's no harder working guy on the national scene than you are, and the great folks at MaxPreps.
Hey, Joe, man, he's the king though. That dude's he's always on the grind, man, and he's made high school football on the national scene what it is today. A lot of that has to do with the hard work that Joe's doing by
absolutely
big time game, man. I'm very thankful for getting to meet Joe and develop a relationship with him, because he's helped me out a lot. And you too, Larry. You're the man, man. I appreciate you guys having me on here.
Hey, listen, looking forward to maybe catching you on our local show. For the local folks that are watching the show, Zack will be appearing on our local the Viking Nation live show in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that, because we're going to be talking about Valdosta and Massillon up there. So, guys, if you've enjoyed this episode tonight, check us out on our national website, nationalhsfb.com. The talk about high school football is 24/7, 365 days a year, because we all love it. We're all super fans of our teams, especially when they hit the national spotlight. So thank you so much for tuning into the show. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Zack. And we'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.